Good morning. It seems like it's going to rain this afternoon. I'll turn on the dehumidifier to prevent any headaches. I offer flowers to the altar, recalling that smile from days past. I miss you now that you're gone, but I'm living strong. Then, now, and always. I'm Kathy, 29 years old. I've been married and living with my husband's family for 6 years now. I was raised in a household with some old-fashioned beliefs, and I had an arranged marriage as my parents wanted. My husband's family, too, has their fair share of old traditions. There's a slight departure from the common sense of the general public. However, life isn't as stifling as I thought it would be. My father-in-law, a firm head of the family, and my mother-in-law, who occasionally spouts strange things but is harmless, treated me kindly. My husband, Andy, is busy with the family business. We're not exactly a sweet couple, and I feel a bit disappointed that he isn't keen on having kids. But overall, we had a good relationship. That was until my father-in-law left this world. Oh, Kathy, you're daydreaming again. The weather's getting weird, too. It's so gloomy and damp every day. Talking to a photo every day is so morbid. My mother-in-law never ceases to complain. Good morning. When I went out to the garden, I saw my father-in-law's favorite flowers, so I cut some before the rain starts, I said with a forced smile. I didn't want to spoil my happy morning mood here, but my mother-in-law looked even more annoyed. What's this? You're making a big show of offering flowers. You just want to say you're taking care of things, right? Is this some sort of snub at me? I sigh inwardly. Honestly, you really don't have any common sense. Even if the forecast says it's going to rain, turning on the dehumidifier beforehand is just a waste of electricity. Who do you think pays for that? Since my father-in-law passed away, she seems to have lost her filter. What used to be occasional nitpicking has significantly increased. At first, I thought it was a way of venting her loneliness after losing her husband, but lately she seems to be looking for me just to criticize. Andy asked me to wash and dry the shirt he's going to use for his business trip starting tomorrow. Drying it here is the fastest. But with the weather turning rainy this afternoon, it's hard to air dry clothes naturally. Blaming Andy for your inability to prepare in advance. How embarrassing for a wife as clumsy as you, to be able to claim you're a good housewife despite your mistakes. How awful. My mother-in-law's face twisted even more, but I'm not neglecting my chores. It's impossible to prepare for a sudden laundry request in advance. However, she persistently nitpicks without considering such circumstances. She said it's gloomy and damp earlier, but I feel the same way about her. She's much more troublesome than the sticky humidity. What's more, she's always exaggerating the daytime events to my husband, always painting me as the bad guy. Initially, my husband ignored it, but recently he's been saying, "It's annoying, make her stop," or "Isn't it your fault?" and getting in a bad mood. As a result, there's no sign of my mother-in-law's criticisms or her false tattling stopping. On the contrary, they seem to be escalating. But if I confront her, her shrill voice only gets louder, reaching frequencies that echo outside the house. In the end, letting her do as she pleases and apologizing to let the storm pass was the most peaceful way to deal with it. I'm exhausted. I'm sorry, father-in-law, for showing you such a mess. My mother-in-law's face twisted even more, but I'm not neglecting my chores. When my father-in-law collapsed from a stroke, my mother-in-law said, "I don't have the strength for caregiving," and did almost nothing. During changes in the weather or season, my father-in-law, who suffered from headaches and joint pain, would be grateful to me for my strenuous efforts to maintain a constant temperature and humidity. He would warmly smile and thank me, saying, "It's quite different now, thank you." As someone who had lost her real father in her childhood, I was initially confused about how to interact with my father-in-law, but he was very gentle, even while being steadfast. I feel like he thanked me in various situations. He was someone who was not stingy with his words towards anyone, and was positive about everyday events. What stands out to me is when I was still new to the household, before I became accustomed to the kitchen, I once forgot to turn on the stove while concentrating and learning the household seasoning for cooking. When it was time for the meal, I realized I hadn't cooked the potatoes. I braced myself, expecting to be scolded, but my father-in-law laughed it off and said, "Human beings feel a meal is even more delicious when they're hungry, so let's wait patiently." He even went on to thank me for always providing delicious meals. In this way, he lightened my spirits, and this attitude did not change even when he fell ill. Even during my first experience with caregiving, which I wasn't proficient in, he kept telling me, "You're a lifesaver, thank you." He was like my real father. That's why, even though time has passed since he passed away, I still find myself taking to his picture every morning, and I'm concerned about the room temperatures and humidity before it rains. My mother-in-law, who's become more harsh, and I sought solace in his smiling picture. Hey, what's this, all wrinkled and covered in fur? One night while cleaning up after dinner, my husband Andy came holding a shirt I had ironed and put it in the suitcase in the evening. And what about our bedroom? It's a mess, and the stuff for tomorrow's trip is all scattered. What the hell? I told you I'm leaving early tomorrow. Andy has also changed since my father-in-law passed away. He has become harsher. I truly realized that my father-in-law was the pillar of this household. Andy threw the shirt at me with a stern face, and I was surprised. Wait, what? What do you mean the stuff is all scattered? Hold on, this... From the wide-open window, the rain was pouring in sideways, drenching the curtains. And on the bed, the luggage had spilled out of the suitcase and was scattered about. In a hurry, I closed the window and crashed down to wipe up the poured-in rain. Huh? Brownie? In the corner of the room, there was a community cat, Brownie. Poor thing, you're shaking so much. Come here, I'll dry you off. Despite the disastrous state of the room, I couldn't ignore the drenched cat, so I gently wrapped Brownie in a towel. I know you're not the kind of kitten who would do something like this. Holding Brownie, who was purring lightly, I consoled him. Hey, what are you doing? Then I heard Andy's irritated voice from behind. That's a stray cat, isn't it? Don't use a towel on something like that, and that thing probably made the mess in the room. Get it out of here now. Behind the disgruntled Andy was my mother-in-law. What a mess! The room, the stuff for the trip, everything is all messed up. And what's that dirty thing? Using a fine towel, and that is unbelievable. I'm speechless at your lack of common sense. She's hardly speechless. She's triumphantly blabbing. Prioritizing a cat that broke into the house and caused this mess over the actual disaster. You must be out of your mind. My mother-in-law's voice, louder than ever, made me finally retort. With all due respect, mother-in-law, it wasn't Brownie who made the mess in the room, right? Huh! That can't be. My mother-in-law defended herself, but it didn't make sense no matter how you look at it. Because the shirt that Andy brought was wrinkled and covered in fur, but it wasn't wet. If a soaked cat caused a mess, the shirt and the luggage should be wet too, shouldn't they? Exactly, the stuff on the bed was messy, but not wet at all. Rather, only the shirt was covered in fur. The rest seemed merely scattered. And I had the suitcase closed and placed next to the shelf. It would be impossible for a cat to move it to the bed, unlock it, and mess it up. That's not all. My mother-in-law's hand was covered in several band-aids. She didn't have them in the morning, so it's proof she injured herself in the afternoon. If my guess is correct, those scratches are from being scratched by Brownie. The windows are intact, and so are the screens. How on earth could the cat have gotten in on its own? Moreover, only where this little one was is it soaking wet. There aren't even any wet footprints. Without someone deliberately doing it, this couldn't have happened. As I talked while keeping eye contact, my mother-in-law, Kathy, backed away inch by inch. Her demeanor was almost as if she were confessing her guilt. And the bandage on your hand. But before I could finish my sentence, my husband's voice boomed. Shut up! Caught off guard by his loud voice, I cringed, to which my husband, Andy, spat out angrily. I don't care. Just kick it out and clean up quickly. Don't make me repeat myself. I have to get up early tomorrow. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Get it ready fast. Surprised by Andy's outrage, I pushed back. It does matter. This is over the top no matter how you look at it. This isn't something you can brush off as a mere prank. We need to take it seriously. I couldn't hide my anger at Kathy's excessive behavior. But Andy was dismissive. Don't mess with me. It's your job to sort out the house issues. Do I ever bring my work problems home and complain? No, right? Even after coming home tired, I can't rest every single day. I have to listen to such unpleasant stuff. I'm fed up. He vented out furiously. It seemed as though his pent-up frustration at having to listen to my daily complaints about Kathy was overflowing all at once. But that wasn't fair. I never grumbled to Andy. It was Kathy who kept feeding him lies. Why am I the one getting blamed? I'm having a hard time too. I opened my mouth again, but Andy, still angry, grabbed my arm and dragged me to the front door. That's enough. Go somewhere else. If you weren't here, my mom wouldn't have anything to complain about. Before I could even put on my shoes, I was pushed outside. I heard the sound of a lock clicking into place. Hey, wait a minute. Open up, Andy. Hey, hey. I called out in a loud voice, but there was no response from Andy, only the sound of Kathy's malicious laughter. Even though I couldn't see her, I could easily imagine Kathy's spiteful smile. Just like that dirty stray cat, perhaps a stray daughter-in-law would be more appropriate. Serves you right. After that, the light in the entrance was turned off and I was left out in the pouring rain, holding the cat in my arms. I can't believe it. After I was locked out of our house and had to take refuge at my parents' place, and a few days later, I was summoned again to the house. They were a historically significant family, so my mother cautioned me not to get divorced and apologize. However, I was feeling down. I'm probably going to be scolded. I thought about having a discussion, but now I might as well say that I want a divorce. He hasn't contacted me since that day. Feeling heavy-hearted when I arrived, I found a room full of relatives, and the atmosphere was more daunting than I had anticipated. In contrast, Kathy and Andy, whom I hadn't seen for a while, looked triumphant. Could this be about disowning me? This is a bigger deal than I thought. I became even more nervous, but the head of the main house, who would be my grandfather-in-law, said something unexpected.
The reason I gathered everyone here today is to discuss the inheritance. We plan to switch to distribution, keeping up with the times.
This was not at all what I expected. I was relieved that it seemed I wasn't going to be blamed. On the other hand, Kathy and Andy became excited, pushing their way through the relatives. How the assets be divided specifically? What about the house we're living in? There's land, vacation homes, and a company too. Kathy brazenly put forth her greedy demands. She whispered to Andy that he should seize this opportunity to gain control of the business given his promotion. Andy didn't seem entirely against the idea. Seeing their shamelessly happy faces, I decided once and for all to go through with the divorce. I could easily imagine my future with the wealth-seeking Andy and Kathy, who would accuse me of being a freeloader and gold digger. It would be better to cut ties cleanly. Right now, they would likely be happy to divorce, but then,
there's no property for you two to inherit.
My grandfather-in-law rejected Kathy and Andy's expectations with a heavy sigh.
What?
The patriarch spoke to the two of them, who were taken aback.
I will bequeath my assets to Kathy. There's none for you two.
Having my name abruptly called, I was at a loss for words, and my in-laws were flabbergasted. You must be joking. A wife doesn't have such rights, and she's run away from home abruptly without a shred of responsibility. A failure who doesn't even bear children. We were thinking of disowning her, right, Andy?
Yeah, it's a hassle to have a dispute at home. If we don't have enough hands to manage the house and the business, hiring people is more efficient and it's better for our mental health, I think.
They coldly discarded me. Then the patriarch, who had heard the statements, pulled out an envelope from his pocket. A will? The patriarch solemnly read out to the stunned couple the will of his son, my father-in-law. In the event of a dispute after his death, all borrowed property should be returned to the main family. However, in regard to his wife, Kathy, she continued to receive the protection of the main family. In other words, no matter what happens, I would always be able to live with the support of the main family.
What? That's a lie, right?
My husband was speechless and my mother-in-law was in shock. The patriarch shrugged his shoulders.
Kathy, I plan to bequeath you the property you need to live. If I lend it, it will tie you to this house. But if I bequeath it, you can live alone even if you divorce. Or you could remain our daughter-in-law and remarry if you want. I was also adopted, so I can somewhat understand your position. As the main family, we will respect your decision, so don't worry.
The patriarch who said this and laughed resembled my father-in-law in my memory.
Well, wait! That's too much! What did we do? She ran away on her own. We are the victims here.
She argued vehemently that it was me, the wife, who was in the wrong.
There is no need to add insult to injury.
Huh? What are you talking about? As my mother-in-law tilted her head, an unexpected person appeared in the living room at the patriarch's door. The elderly neighbor from next door? To my surprised face, the cheerful man showed me an envelope that was identical to the will I had seen earlier.
I was asked by your father-in-law to contact the main family if something happened at home. When I saw them kick out the wife alone, barefoot and penniless on a pouring night, I didn't think it was right, so I stepped in. Right, Brownie?
The old man, carrying Brownie in his arms, handed him over to me. Thank you for the shoes and transportation money that time. I couldn't personally thank you, and you went out of your way to consider this. As I thanked him, hugging the warm Brownie, he brushed it off.
It's give and take. We help each other when in trouble. He used to say, he was a good man. That you were going through a tough time after he was gone is a well-known fact to the neighbors. You held up well.
My eyes grew hot. My father-in-law, till his last, had sown seeds of kindness. Thanks to that, my neighbors were on my side.
Even now, do you insist on being the victims? The patriarch asked in a stern voice. My husband and mother-in-law who were watching our exchange with their mouths agape. If you can't respect someone as an outsider, then you should leave, and you don't need to come to the company anymore. The two of you start over somewhere else and become people who understand shame. At the patriarch's roar, my husband and mother-in-law shrank back. Under the cold gaze of the patriarch and the gathered relatives, my husband and mother-in-law looked like they were sitting on a bed of nails. Afterwards, under the supervision of the main family, my mother-in-law and husband left the house. My husband struggled to find a new job, and they seemed to have started working part-time together. As for me, I divorced, but chose to stay at home. With the patriarch's permission, I am now taking care of my father-in-law's memorial monument. The main family also shows consideration, telling me to consult them if there are changes such as remarriage. We've received some peaches in season from next door. Let's eat them together, as it's their first harvest year. Here, a little share for you too, Brownie. I think I will cherish these peaceful days surrounded by my father-in-law's portrait and the smiles of my neighbors.